Good morning. I saw Barb and then,
I'm here.
oh, there she is. She was our quorum. There you are.
I'm here.
I haven't heard anything from Alan.
Either one.
Well, Alan Delich isn't going to join, but Alan Gregory, he never responded, but I assumed he's joining.
Okay, and we know that John Maynard is out of pocket. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call us to order, and we'll hope that we see Alan Gregory soon. Any public comments? Seeing no public, I don't think we have anyone else participating. No. Okay, so let's move to approval of the June 4, 2024 minutes. Any comments, questions, or I'll take a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
And a second? Barb is our second. Any other concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
And financial reports.
Yes, we should have May and June next month. We
Okay.
don't have anything this month.
Okay, thank you. Accessibility requirements and website status. I am not seeing Carol. Jim, do you have an update from her?
Well, she just texted me a little while ago and said she would probably be about 10 minutes late. So I guess maybe if you want to skip over that and let Farley talk about the Day of Friendship, but I don't know if Sky is there. Is he?
I think he was expecting to come on in about 5 minutes, so I just texted him and asked him to jump in. So I can go ahead and start though. Because I was going to kind of give you an idea of how this project has evolved, and it's quite different than what I had spoke to you all about previously.
Okay,
So a little context if you want. Good?
that sounds good.
Okay, very good. Okay, so, and I don't remember if I actually even told you formally last time because I ran out of the room. Okay, so, Audrey Gray and Natalie Johnson and I attended the DCI conference in Durango in April. And, I don't know if we meant to do this intentionally or, I mean, we had talked about it, but we brought up the LaFawn property everywhere. Everybody we networked with, anybody, we talked about the LaFawn because we were trying to generate some ideas around this property and what we might do to help. We did have dinner with Jim Hyde, who is the author of this book. It's called Building Small, and he's gone to every DCI conference that I've ever been to, but we actually got to sit down at our URA dinner with him. And so we talked with him about the LaFawn for about an hour and a half. It was great. And one of the ideas that we came away with as we drove home for 4.5 or 5 hours, very long trip, was we kind of came up with the idea of doing a pop-up on the LaFawn to generate some energy, get some interest from the community, get the community on the property. These have worked in other communities, so why not Manitou? And what I brought to you all was our idea to do a pop-up on the Day of Friendship, 2 hours prior to the start of Day of Friendship. We went through a lot of ideas about different pop-ups that we could do, but the simplest and the quickest we thought we could come up with was Juice and Jazz on the LaFawn, starting at 9 o'clock, bring in some food trucks, connect with the community, the Manitou Music Foundation to have them pull in a jazz band for us, free to the community, bring them in, have fun for 2 hours, and then everybody goes off to the Day of Friendship. So that was the idea that we brought to you all, and I was given direction, even though I ran out of the room, to come up with a budget and to contact Rich Block. So we started working on a budget, primarily Audrey and I. Natalie at that point sort of started to step away from this, but we started working on a budget. And I called Rich that afternoon, and he was fantastic. Very excited about the whole idea. He did have some concerns about, mostly about who was going to take the lead. He didn't want to have to pay into this project, but was willing to support it in any way he could otherwise, and the insurance piece. So with that information, we started, trying to figure out, really mine down on this budget. And in the meantime, Natalie ran into Stephen Miller from the Manitou Music Foundation over at the MAC. She put him in touch with me. And then Audrey and Sky Lewis, myself, yes, just the four of us met to talk about the Music Foundation's idea of their own for the LaFun property. It turns out that they had also come up with their own idea quite a while ago, like a year ago, to do an event on the LaFun with an all-day music concert. And they have money and they have a budget and they have experience. They've got all the things. So we're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So next, we pulled in Rich into that conversation with Sky and Audrey, myself, and Stephen Miller on Zoom. And again, Richard was just all in. It was fantastic. So the event itself has evolved from this 2-hour juice and jazz to something much bigger. But I think, and Sky's on the call now, thank you for joining, and Audrey Gray. I think that once you hear Sky talk about their idea, you'll realize that they are definitely, they have the experience, they have the know-how, they have the contacts. They just need a little lift. That's what they need. And I think that as opposed to where we were before, where I and Audrey, we're going to try and pull off juice and jazz. We actually have an organization that knows what they're doing, has done it before, and we just need to support their efforts. And that's where I think the URA can come in. So before you do any questions, I think we should let Sky go ahead and present, or it's not a presentation, but just sort of tell you what their vision is, and then we can move from there.
Sure. Let's see. Should I bring up that document I made? It's just
Sure.
kind of one page. I don't really know how to do this. I don't really use Zoom. Here, let's see.
Audrey, you have a new background. And you
I'm in
say
paradise today.
Does it say Farley?
Let's see. Sorry, I don't ever use Zoom to like show documents. So I'm not
You're
quite.
already doing better than me. I've never figured out how to do that.
Let's see. Max. Okay, got it. Um,
There you go.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Can you guys see that? Sorry, it's on like the reverse coloration.
Yes, we
You can see it. Okay. Yeah, so Manitou Music Foundation and I threw a music festival at the Lulu's in Manitou in December, sort of the very end of December. Lulu's had an opening for a weekend where a band that was supposed to play dropped off. So in about, I think maybe 5 weeks time or so, I had this idea to throw this music festival with a bunch of local bands. And so I pulled in Manatee Music Foundation to help me out with it. And it ended up being a huge success. I think we sold somewhere around like 400 something tickets it was like a day and a half. So we got way more people than we expected to have, and all the bands loved it. We just split the money up equally between all the musicians. And then there was a remainder of like $250 or $300 that I just put in an account in case we wanted to do it again. And already at that point, we were talking about wanting to do a summer one. So Stephen and I have been talking about where a good place would be to do that. And we both kind of jokingly said that the LaFun property would be great for it because it's, not in the residential district. It's the right size and sort of layout. There's lots of hotels around, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. So, fast forward to a little while ago, and Stephen told me that he had been talking sort of with Crane and some other people and that it was actually a possibility that we could do it there. So anyways, without further ado, here's a little bit of a synopsis that I made up last night. So the date we're looking at is August 24th at, the LaFon property. The time is a little bit to be determined because it kind of depends on what the city will allow, but our rough time would be like noon to 10 p.m., could be 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or if the city would let us go later, we would love to go a little bit later than that. We're thinking $20 per ticket. And what it is, one-day music festival featuring 10 to 12. Stephen corrected me this morning. It might actually be more like 8 to 10, but a lot of local bands within various genres. We try to book bands that have at least a decent pull so we can sell a lot of tickets. And then we want to have booths for, local artisans and businesses to sell their wares or promote their products or whatever. Who's putting it on? Manatee Music Foundation and me, with support from Match, and then hopefully from the URA and Crane. We're asking the URA for $1,500. And then here's a little spreadsheet with our projected expenses, which these are kind of rounded numbers. Obviously, they could change a little bit, but a lot of them are actually pretty close. So paying musicians, promotion, the stage, the sound people, the stage and the lighting are a pretty big expense, but that's also something that really gives it that music festival feeling and makes people feel like their $20 was really worth it. We'll have security there. We might actually have like 1 or 2 more than this. We have 2 on the sheet, but it might be 3 or 4. Ticket overhead. This is if we sold 350, although we really think we would sell more like 500. That's just like the fees we have to pay to sell the tickets. Trash, alcohol permit. We'll have a bunch of, plenty of porta potties and hand washing stations. We'll have event insurance that'll cover us, and basically everybody involved will name as additional insured just in case something were to happen, for at least $1 million, maybe 2 million. A green room for the bands, just with some snacks and drinks and stuff. Site prep, we're just talking about putting up some hay bales and just kind of making the site look a little bit more inviting than just a dirt lot. And then we just need a generator to power the stage and everything. We had also talked about having a solar, some solar involved, which couldn't power the stage, but it could definitely power like any food vendors that are there or any other type of vendors, any additional lighting, stuff like that. We would love to use it as much as we can. So yeah, that comes out to 12,250 roughly. Ideally, we'd pay the musicians more than 100 each. Last year, we were able to pay each musician 125 per performance because a lot of musicians played like 2 shows. Some of them played 3. So it was a really good deal for them. Everyone was really excited about the pay they got. And then our income, I have about 250 in an account still. MMF, because of match, we have like 1,000 in there. And then we're hoping for 1,500 from the URA, maybe 1,000 from Crane. And then tickets, if we sell 350, would be 7,000. Alcohol sales, we're just estimating. And then if we need to, we would try to get some sponsors, and maybe there's some other places we can get some money. So the projected surplus with the URA and Crane help, $2,500, because these expenses could vary, and we will almost surely run into some stuff that we hadn't foreseen. But without the URA or Crane's help, we have exactly $0. Sad face there. And then as far as kind of how this would tie into the URA, these are just some ideas that I had of, or that we kind of discussed in our meeting too, of how the event could be used to promote development. One, have an informational booth / display near the entrance outlining potential uses of the site and any other information the URA thinks would be beneficial. Exposure of the site to 350 to 500, maybe even more locals, some of which may be inspired by the lot and be interested in working with Paragon to develop it. And then exposure of the entire gateway to those same people, bringing commerce to local businesses, hotel stays, eating at restaurants, and people just becoming kind of more familiar with that area who might usually pass it by on the highway and not even go through there, or they just drive through and don't really think twice about it because historically it's kind of just been, older hotels and stuff like that, with the exception of Adams and like a few other places. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Sky. Question? Comments?
Question, Sky. This is
Yeah.
Barb. Winter. I just had a question about, did you say when you held this before it was at Lulu's?
Yeah.
And so I guess contingent with that, isn't parking and transportation a problem for people coming into this?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a concern. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a problem. One idea we had was, and I forgot to put all this on the sheet. But one idea we had was contacting the owner of that Lulu's building, the Castaways building, and seeing if we could potentially pay him to have a day's worth of parking, just to rent that lot, since, the hotel uses the one part of it, but essentially all the parking that Lulu's was entitled to, which is all the stuff in front. And then there's also another lot behind the Castaways building that's kind of hidden out of view, but there's a bunch of parking back there as well.
It's not dedicated to the motel there?
No, there is some that's dedicated to the motel, but it's only it's like a third of the front lot or so. And then there's, like I said, there's another back lot that really isn't used by the hotel. That's more for the Castaways building. And then also, we can talk to Maggie's Farm about potentially using the car museum lot. And then we also talked about maybe there's a way to work with the city to use one of the electric shuttles to kind of bus people in from Hiawatha maybe, or other parking lots in town. And then of course there's like the baseball field lot and some other spots around there. But we would definitely encourage people to use Pike Ride and carpool and all that kind of stuff. Anything we can do to make it a little more environmentally friendly and just save on parking.
So what would you say the demographic of your turnout was last time? What kind of folks came out?
It was actually a huge spread just because the bands that we had, varied quite a bit. We had some really, like the band that opened the whole festival, K Squared, is a younger couple with a couple other musicians in the band. They're probably in their early 20s. And then we had like Big Sky. I'm trying to think of who else. We had a few bands that had a few older folks in it, and then everything in between. I mean, we really had all ages up to probably 70 as far as musicians go. And then the fan bases tend to kind of match somewhat what the musicians are. So, I mean, there was really a lot of people across the spectrum, you know, a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, everywhere, really. Not a ton of super young people. I would say everyone there was, well, at least 21, but the majority of people there were probably like 25 to 60, somewhere in that
Yeah, and
range. But
I was just asking and I'm all for making use of the property in a suitable manner. I don't know that the outcome necessarily, there's always a 1 or 2 off if it actually elicits prospective users or buyers of the property in the future. I don't know. Jim, you have a opinion of that?
Not really. I think Paragon still intends to develop it, so I don't think they're looking at this as a marketing opportunity, no.
Because Farley, wasn't that kind of the premise of your early thoughts, is it would present the property for utilization for the future?
I would not exactly. I
Oh.
think it's more of an opportunity to energize and put focus on the property, but not necessarily for developers. It's really about the community. We need we need to release some of the tension around that property in the community. And I think that that's really primarily what this does. And I really do think that if you put people on the property in this other way, as opposed to looking like, how can we develop this? It's getting on the property and really looking at and just feeling what it's like to be in the space. I know that sounds a little kumbaya, but I'm really trying to just say that, to get people thinking about it and to relax about it, they need to actually be in the space and experience it. That's where ideas come from. So that's what I think the purpose of the pop-up is. And this is just an extension of that pop-up idea.
Other questions?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea and have from the beginning. And I think we ought to support this. I think it would be a positive for the area and for the property.
I agree. I have to say, it's not kumbaya to me to think about using this property in a new way, as an interim use in between what it was and then becoming bare ground to what it could be, because none of us have been on the property. I mean, I haven't set foot on that property in years since I knew someone who lived there. So, I think it would be a really good way. And frankly, I like this better than a pop-up because there's some longevity to it, right? A day-long event means people are coming and going and interacting on the avenue. And that's what we wanted to see happen on the avenue. And this is really the first time I can think of that we would have an event on the avenue that wasn't the opening of the West Side Avenue project, right? Like a grand opening event, or when we did the dedication of the park. This would be the very first thing of any size and scope that we've done. So I think my only concern for Jim would be to figure out from Sky's budget, which I loved, by the way. More budget should include smiley faces and frowny faces from my perspective. It would help a lot. I think for Jim to figure out what from the budget we could legitimately fund with URA dollars would be my issue. And my thought is that it's something around the insurance and the safety and security or something like that. That those would be legitimate uses of URA funds. Otherwise, I'm in. Other comments, concerns? Nancy?
Just weather contingency.
Yeah, what if the weather is terrible? What do we do?
Yeah, we've talked about having an alternate date that we can move it to. Obviously, the hard part with musicians is just, we're talking about weekends here, and a lot of musicians and bands book out pretty far. But that being said, I mean, the lineup could potentially change a little bit if we had an alternate date, but um, we can definitely choose another date that's maybe a little bit farther out, like in September, so that it's far enough that bands might not be booked yet then. And it's just hard to like have bands hold 2 dates because a lot of them rely on it for their income. But it's definitely not out of the question, and it's something that Stephen had mentioned too, like, should we have an alternate date for it? Either way, we would definitely do a rain check and have it happen. It's just a little bit tricky with scheduling musicians. The rest of it's pretty easy to move around.
Yeah.
So Sky, would anybody be like especially a headliner sort of draw?
We're still putting the bands together. We only have we didn't want to get too far into it until we knew we were going to be able to cover the funding and actually have approval to even use the lot and all that kind of stuff, which Jim has already, we had a meeting with him, and we talked about that we'll definitely have enough insurance, and just that I've run festivals before. I've played probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 festivals, been to plenty of them. So I'm not worried about anything on that front. But yeah, we're talking to some bigger bands that are also local. We're talking to Dave Aber, who is in the Jerry Garcia band, but he lives locally. You guys probably know him or know of him. So we're trying to get him to do something. But kind of one of the cool things about the December one was, there were some bands that were bigger than others, but it was kind of the combination of a bunch of sort of good pulling local bands. And we did give the bands with a bigger pull, like, better sort of primetime slots, I guess you could say. Even though everybody got paid the same. And I didn't make anybody's name bigger on the flyer or anything like that on the poster, but so it was really meant to be sort of a, King Arthur round table, like we're all equal type of thing. But yeah, the bands with a bigger draw, we would put into prime spots at 8 p.m., something like that. But yeah, it was kind of the combination of all the bands and then the overlap of the band's fans that kind of ended up bringing this huge crowd that it was more than we were even expecting, since we had such a short run up to get it all put together. But yeah, in the end, we sold 400 something, 430 or something tickets. We were hoping for 200. So it was a huge success. And it was really just the fact that I stayed on everyone to promote. I was like, you have to be a part of this. We're all doing this together. We need you to reach out to your fan base. We need you to be posting. And I really stayed on top of them to post once a week. I would reach out to the group email and the group text and just say, hey, today, can everyone, share the flyer, just talk about it, say that you're excited to play, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so there will be some local bands with bigger draws than others. We do have
Sky, I
one.
was just, not to interrupt you, but I was just thinking of just an idea, not to get into your business, but
Yeah.
The group Martini Shot,
Yeah.
those guys.
Yeah.
Well, their trumpet player, Brian Person,
Yeah, he was my music teacher in middle school, so I know him pretty well.
he was my daughter's music teacher as well. And I don't know if that would be a hook to see if they could participate in some way, Sky.
Yeah, we can ask them for sure.
As
We're
a
still kind of building the list,
a
but
community support effort, but
yeah,
somebody
that's a good
like
idea.
that,
They
I
do
think
it.
would be a good draw to us.
Yeah, they have a good draw. Definitely, they would be a good one to put in one of those later slots. Yeah, like I said, we're still dreaming up the band list, but
Farley has a question or a comment.
Yes. So back to the rain issue, if we have bad weather, is it possible to just budget, hopefully not have to spend, but budget for big tents? The reason I ask is we used to do an event, Fiddles, Vittles and Vino over at Rockledge Ranch every year. It was about 30 restaurants and 8 bluegrass bands, I think, and it went all day long. And it always rained. Like it always rained. And I mean serious rain, lightning, thunder, pouring down, and the event went on. And it went on because everybody was under tents and then the band was under their own tent, but you could hear them. So I'm just wondering, instead of trying to figure out a different date, because that does sound tricky with the musicians, is it possible to budget for the cost of some tents if necessary? And probably some hay bales also for stepping on, maybe.
And that plays directly into what my question was, because the opposite of rain is if it's unbearably hot. And I don't think that there's, unlike like at Meadowgrass, when you go and sit in the shade, there's really no place here to get out of the heat. So both sides, and tents might cover both of those contingencies. So
Yeah, that's definitely feasible. And there, it's probably, I mean, definitely, yeah, either way, the sun or the rain, tents would be great. If we were pretty positive it was going to be just like a nice, perfect day, which is probably not very likely. And at the end of August, it'll probably be pretty hot. We could, you know, potentially like cancel our tent reservation or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I know some companies that you can rent gigantic tents from, and we could just go that route so that either way there's some shade. There's a lot of ways we can set it up as well, like where we place the tent. It could be back from the stage a little bit so that there's still kind of a sunny area for people to dance like in front if they want, or they can step back into the tent. Also, if you put the tent too close to the stage being raised would be more difficult to see it. So we'd probably want to put the tent back, you know, like 40 feet or something like that. But yeah, that's definitely, you know, especially if we have help from Crane and the URA and then maybe a couple local sponsors. I'm sure, you know, my company, Manitou Springs Real Estate, will throw some money at it. But yeah, tents aren't too expensive to rent for one day. Putting them up is the harder part, but I think we can figure it out. We have a lot of volunteers.
Any other questions or comments? Motion to express support for and participate in this would be great right now.
I would go ahead and move that we allocate $1,500 from the URA for appropriate expenses. And that we, if that's a possibility, we become a sponsor for the event.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? Barb, I want to make sure if you have any other comments that you get to make them now.
Nope, as long as the Nancy, that the city would be on board and we wouldn't have any issues from the city.
I can't imagine that the city would have any issues. I would hope not.
And just, I think from your security standpoint, Sky, that we're not turning into, and I say this lightly, not negatively, but that we're not turning into a marijuana fest with the shops that are in town.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be something that we prohibit in our guidelines and stuff like that. I mean, we can't always control everything that happens, obviously. And that's kind of, you know, some people might sneak it in or whatever, but we will have security there and, you know, we'll discourage it certainly. Yeah.
Okay. All those in, oh, Nancy.
I was just going to say, I would just talk with Megan Weiss sooner rather than later about it. And technically she coordinates events on city property, but it's just always coordinate, because there'll probably be police would need to know, fire, the EMTs and so on would need to know that this is happening. So thanks.
It might be, in that regard, it might be a nice opportunity to promote our Manitou ambulance service too, if they're
Mhm.
sitting on site, that people start realizing that they're available.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sky, thank you so much. And Audrey,
Thank you,
you as
guys.
well for your leadership. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for hearing us out, and we look forward to working with you. And I just wanted to mention again, if we wanted to put together some sort of, display or informational booth or anything like that to kind of talk more about the property and in case we get, some business people coming on that might think of a good idea for development. I think that would be a good idea just to have it there. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but maybe we just get a big poster on like the plastic board type thing, the hardboard made up that we can just kind of put up somewhere that people can read about. And then as far as the allocation of funds, yeah, whatever you think within that budget that you want me to allocate your funds towards, we can definitely do that. Security, insurance, all that kind of stuff. So we definitely appreciate your time and your support.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to Carol. Accessibility requirements and the website status.
Okay, actually, I'm glad Sky's, oh, I lost him. Jim, if you'll connect with me with Sky, I'll make sure that I get materials from him to be able to put it on our social and start promoting it and that sort of thing. But I love his idea. I think we can do just like super inexpensive real estate signs, funded by, supported by the URA. Learn more, go to our website. So I think that's great. I came in at the end of it, but it sounds really cool. So, the latest on the accessibility guidelines is after our last special meeting, I met with Mitchell. I have a couple notes here. And I sent Jim kind of an update last week. So we did get the accessibility statement on the old website. One of the things that we are in process with the new website is designed, but I do have a couple of meetings. I have a meeting scheduled with Audio Eye, who the city uses for their plugin for accessibility. And then Marion actually uses a different company that I think is a little less expensive. But since we are looking at potentially riding on the city's coattails or partnering with the city with our accessibility, it might make sense, regardless of cost, to look at Audio Eye, just so there's no, it's seamless between the two. So accessibility. All right. So when Mitchell and I talked, basically what I said to him is that, we kind of wanted to partner with the city, whether it was we rolled up underneath them and spent a certain amount of money to cover their piece of the cost, or if they just kind of helped us with best practices based on what they were doing with Nelnet. He let me know that, and Nancy, you can probably clarify this, that next week the accessibility coordinator for the city is starting. So that person will start on the 8th. So right now, Mitchell and I have it set that he and I will follow up on the 15th to kind of determine what that person's role is, what's happening. Obviously, he did not promise anything, nor could he, but he said he would run it by Denise. Like, was it something that we might be able to work with them since they were already doing all this heavy lifting? One of the things that was super interesting is I said, well, what are you doing with other boards and commissions that have this problem? And he said, well, there really aren't any. The URA is kind of a unicorn in that we have our own budget and we have our own initiatives and we're a quasi city entity, but we're not a city entity per se. So that was up for question. But at this point, the next follow-up is on the 15th. So questions about that?
I don't see any. Thank
Okay,
you.
Cool. And then Jim, and I don't remember if you had it on the agenda, but I did have those videos. Did you want to preview those?
It's up to Debbie. I think it looks like we're moving along pretty well here. We don't have a lot of things on the agenda, so I think I think it'd be great if the board could see that.
Okay. Do you have access to them from that email I sent, or do you want me to hop on this computer and pull them up?
Yeah, I don't have access to them.
Okay. Let me go see what I can do.
Debbie, I don't know if you want to just jump ahead while Carol's trying to figure that out and
Yeah.
talk about our meeting with Rich Block.
Or I'd rather have you do your ED report first, if that's all right.
Okay. Well, as you know, we've been working with Carol, obviously, on trying to get this website to comply with the accessibility. And so I drafted that statement and you guys acted on it at our special meeting. So that's taken care of. And I think we're covered as far as what our immediate requirements are to meet the accessibility issues. So Carol's put that on the old website, and of course, it'll show up on the new website when that's ready to fly. So we've been working on that. What else have we done? I just wanted to make a reminder while I've got the floor here that council will be discussing the MOU on the 9th. I confirmed that with Denise, so that's going to be on the schedule. So 6 o'clock. I don't know who can be there live. I think John is planning on being there, as well as David Neville. So I think we'll be there just to see how that goes. I don't have any inkling as far as any reaction from council at this point. Maybe Nancy knows more than I do. Also coordinating with Farley, of course, on the Day of Friendship and now the music festival, which is kind of really blown up, and it's going to be pretty exciting. And then also we'll talk a little bit here about our meeting with Paragon. And they still seem to be very interested in moving on with the project. Debbie can go into more detail as far as where they think they are and how they see proceeding at this point, including also extending the contract for another year, which they need to do by next month. And that's pretty much all that I've got on my calendar here.
Okay. You know, the only other thing that you, no, we'll wait and talk about it during the Paragon discussion. Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Comments? Okay, I think Carol's ready to show us videos.
We're excited about moving into the URA because of the opportunities that it's providing. Being in the downtown Manitou Springs core is a very different animal business-wise. You're mostly busy from walking traffic, and on this side of town, we are a destination. Our lunch business increased here considerably.
When we moved in here, the street improvements had not begun because before it wasn't walkable and now you can walk. And now with this kind of more centralized location, it's like a year-round business. You don't have to save all of your summer money because you know you're not going to make money in the winter. And one thing that has gone in while we were here is the match tax, which is the Manitou Arts, Culture and Heritage tax. So not only have we increased our revenues, but we're increasing the revenue that pays for a lot of the creative projects in Manitou Springs right now.
I've lived in Manitou for most of the last 35 or 40 years. We oversee public art for Manitou Springs, but also still do the creative district work. I would say that this area for years was forgotten. There's been a lot of talk about possibly a small grocery in this area, but I think more in the restaurant and bar businesses that could come in here and make it even more of a destination.
The city of Manitou Springs is very excited to have a new piece of property on the south end of town, formerly known as the Dillon Motel. We are looking forward to creating a transportation hub in southern Manitou, essentially creating a new anchor point within that area of the community, bringing residents and visitors alike to the businesses in that area.
Urban renewal is something that you don't just start a project and finish it in 5 years and then you're done. You're always looking to improve, upgrade, take a property and repurpose it And that's what still can happen with several different properties here in the URA area.
There's a lot of aging properties down on this side of town, and they're just ripe for redevelopment in some capacity. So there's been a lot of change down here and for the good. And I think that this area of town is still, there's so much that could be done down here to make it a vital, vibrant piece of Manitou Springs.
A really nice reef.
So the Creative Alliance is partnering with the URA to install 5 total large permanent sculptures in this area. We've got 4 done, and the next one should be coming in 2025 or 2026. So the first sculpture is by John Kessler. It's an eagle out of Rocky Mountain granite, and it's at the archway, the pocket park that is the entrance to Manitou Springs. Second piece is the Jody Bliss Muse of Manitou sculpture. It's at the Quality Inn. And then last year we installed the Manitou Juniper at the new Holiday Inn Express. We also installed Wild Contemplation at Fields Park. It's a giant columbine that is also a bench, really lovely. Also, the URA worked with Crane to do the Marcy Morrison Bridge, and we have a really lovely mosaic by Javier Roccobato that also went in last year.
Just being able to see people walk and bike and push a stroller. When I moved here, people staying at the motels behind me, they could not walk down here to the restaurant without taking their life into their hands. That's just not the case anymore. It's a really lovely walk.
I think one game changer was right here at Adams Mountain Cafe, because it obviously changed the habits of a lot of locals as well as Colorado Springs residents who would come here where there was plenty of parking, easily accessible, not to mention being a great restaurant. And that has, became like an anchor. And, we can't ignore the impact of the 2 retail marijuana stores that came in, who have brought a lot of people who just come in and then leave, but it's also brought in a lot of people who've said, oh, let's look around here and see what's here. I've lived in Manitou for most of the last 35 or 40 years. I would say that this area for years was forgotten. It was a mishmash of a few places that were trying to get better or trying to upgrade, and others that were just trying to just hang on as long as they could. It was an area that people drove through and didn't stop. Everything is different. Obviously the West Side Avenue Action Plan that was done between 2016 and about 2020 upgraded the traffic flow through here and also the sidewalks on both sides and the street lights as well, which has been a big element, and the Christmas decorations on those lamps made a big difference. slowly but surely improving the quality with new motels that have come in and have really brought a new appeal to those who still want the family-owned local places. There still are some of those that have made it through and have upgraded enough to stay, in business, but they didn't change their personality.
The only original board member from 2006. So I've seen a lot. I have seen enormous changes down here. The ability to walk the sidewalks, the ability to ride a bike. They've also been working on the Creek Walk Trail, which is behind us. So you have multimodal transportation all through this corridor. And then we saw the Holiday Inn Express go in. We've seen public art go in. Multiple sculptures have been installed in this end of town.
Driving through here, it used to be where you just passed through as fast as you could to get to downtown, but now it's not. Now it's also becoming a destination.
Thank you, Carol. This. Yeah, these look great. Nancy.
I just wanted to suggest that you might want to show one of these next week at the council meeting when you're presenting the MOU, just to, because I think they're very good, and it generated excitement in me. Now it's harder audience, but just to say that there's more on, and are they up on the website already?
They are not, but they will be. I'm actually going to text her right now to tell her to put them on the website.
Okay. So, and I would just
gave-
follow up that there's a couple more on the website that if folks might want to look at them or something, but.
Okay, thank you. Good idea. Yeah, really well done. And a nice update to all the progress that's been made.
Thank you. We're pretty excited.
Any other comments? All right, moving on. The Paragon Development Update. As Jim said, he and I had a Zoom call with Rich and John Block. Okay. Nancy's stepping out just to let you all know, since she's on council, and yeah, for quasi judicial purposes may entertain the proposed Paragon development at some point. So she wants to stay neutral about this so that she can sit in her quasi judicial capacity at whatever point that becomes necessary. So at any rate, the Rich and John Block, the Paragon development team, talked to Jim and I about just gave us an update about where they're at. As you know, as Jim's been reporting to us, they've entertained several development ideas since they purchased the property almost 2 years ago. Their first idea was to do a grocery development, and that failed, particularly because construction costs became very difficult, very high, very fast. So then they turned their attention to affordable housing and some sort of mixed use development. They met with Toby Gannett, who's a local affordable housing developer. They met with a couple of other prospective companies interested and nonprofits interested in doing low income housing per the state's new standards, to take advantage of low income housing tax credits or the funding that's available for low income housing. And frankly, they've exhausted those alternatives at this point. It is very difficult to do those kinds of developments. And given the conditions that they're finding in Manitou with a 20 unit per acre development cap, I guess you'd call ceiling in terms of density, and some, I wouldn't say high requirements, but some higher requirements for parking per residence, they've also, I believe, rejected at this point the idea of a mixed use development. So what they have done is to ask their architects to come up with some different concept plans for a what they're calling an attainable housing development, which is apartments, not condos, at higher density than the city allows. With paying particular attention to our concerns about how the development occurs along the avenue so that it's still pedestrian friendly and looks good. Hang on a second. So we got to see those concept plans. We gave them a little bit of advice about what we've been hearing in the community. And what they are considering doing after meeting with the new city planning director is to bring a concept plan forward to the planning commission. I also suggested to them that they consider going before the housing advisory board first with their concept plan, just to tell the story about their journey in trying to do a low-income housing development that would meet the state standards and the Manitou Springs requirements, which frankly run counter to each other. And it is unclear at this time, because no one's proposed anything in Manitou Springs yet, whether or not Manitou Springs elected officials and the planning commission would be willing to relax the zoning code enough to allow the density of the density of multifamily housing that would be needed in order to meet the state requirements. So they have a lot of information because they've consulted with so many people about how to try to meet the state standards and the city requirements. And I told them I thought it would be beneficial to them to go give that information to the Housing Advisory Board and have a conversation with them first about what they found. They do have some interesting ideas. Jim asked some extensive questions about what does attainable housing mean versus affordable housing. So they have some ideas about how they would try to keep the rents in the attainable market range for people who are working in Manitou Springs who also want to live here. I don't want to describe those here because the methods and the ideas might change, but they are thinking about those things because they're very sensitive to the high cost of housing and the high cost of rents in across the country, but particularly in our region. So, so I was hopeful about the discussion, but I also understand the difficulty of our local politics. And we were frank with them in our comments about, here are the barriers you're going to have to bust through. They do intend to pay the $25,000 fee to continue retain ownership of the property and continue working with us to honor our agreement. That payment would be due in August or September, I think about the end of August. So they do intend to pay that. They are very excited about the Manitou Music Festival idea, and they talked to us about that as well. So overall, it was a really good and frank discussion, and they are moving forward with a concept because at this point they said, we don't know what's possible until we bring something forward because all of our conversations so far have been theoretical. So until we put something on the table for discussion, we don't have any information about what might be possible to do in Manitou under this revised land use code. And they're right. They're right. So Jim, what do you have to add to that? And then we'll take questions and comments.
Well, I think we expressed, at least I did too, Rich, that, this is a little bit disappointing from my viewpoint that we're not able to put affordable housing on the site. I understand their constraints. However, I said, if we're going forward with this attainable housing, you need to define that a little better, especially if you go to Planning Commission and the HAB, as well as do some, pro forma work to show people, not without intense detail, but at least enough to say, you know, in order to develop it, these are our costs. And this is the potential rent structure that we would need to put together in order to cover our costs and make a profit. Because I just don't think that people understand that. And you know, you can't go in front of a board or a commission and say, yeah, well, this is all we can do, and expect them to agree to that. You're going to need to explain to them why the costs are what they are and how much you need to make a reasonable profit. So I think they got that message, and Rich said that they could put together, you know, a fairly simple pro forma that kind of shows, you know, income and expenditures to let people know that why rents have to be what they are.
Thank you. Comments or questions about that? Steve?
As you said, I think it's imperative that they get a concept in front of Planning Commission, because they're not going to get any real feedback until they get to that point.
Yeah, and at this stage, I think even just conversations with the staff aren't providing any new detail or information, because really it's the decision makers that are going to rule on this, because they know they're going to have to ask for exceptions to the code. Okay, so stay tuned for more. I don't know how this will unfold. They want to move fairly quickly. So it could be that in the next 60 days, you'll start to see some movement, and Jim will keep us up to date about what their next steps are, and so that we can participate, attend meetings where they might be presenting those kinds of things. Okay.
Jim I know you all said they spoke with Toby. Has there been any specific discussion about the prospect of this being more narrowly a senior housing project? Because that might be an avenue to pursue as well. I mean, Silver Key is developing senior apartments adjacent to their property, their headquarters out on Fountain Boulevard. And, you know, maybe if it had a narrower scope, there might be some other avenues of state or federal funding that would support a project more specifically in that alignment or in that space. So just an idea.
Yeah, and I don't think they've ruled that out at all, Barb. I think they're exploring every avenue they can. So, you know, we'll definitely make sure that they, you know, consider that.
And I don't know, somewhere in all this, I mean, there's CHAFA type funding, and there's.
Yeah, the problem they're having with CHAFA, and I've dealt with this in past too, is that it's such a long time frame to get approved, and you need to, you know, put all your sources of revenue together. And then what can happen, and I've seen this happen before, is that CHAFA turns you down the first go around. And so then you're waiting another year before you can reapply for CHAFA funding. So they're real hesitant about going that route.
Well, I mean, we've waited 2 years already. I mean, they could have something in the mill that maybe has some prospect in the future just by putting it out there. It kind of goes to Ann's comment about they need to get things out in front of people. And otherwise, there's just going to be totally inaction as it relates to utilization of the site. So.
Any other comments?
I just have a quick question. What is the square footage of the La Fun?
It's 2.2 acres. Okay, we've covered the Day of Friendship celebration already. So, and Nancy has left. So, Ann, would you mind stepping out to see her? And while she does that, I'm going to say a couple quick things for under other business, just to bring you up to speed. One thing is that while I was traveling, which I've been doing extensively for the last 5 weeks, a Manitou Springs resident Dave Strawn addressed the city council about the URA and his desire to see development along the avenue. And he sent his comments to me while I was traveling, and I've unearthed them in the last week since I've been back. So just be looking for an email from me because I'm going to forward his comments to you. He made some really thoughtful comments, and he's been in conversation with me informally over the last year or so about the URA. But he decided he wanted to go and address the entire council, and particularly before we go and talk to council about the MOU next week, I thought it would be good for you to see what he had to say. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to remember that Plan Manitou has its weekly community polling out about all the various topics within Plan Manitou. If you haven't seen those, you can hop on the Plan Manitou website, I believe, or on Facebook if you're on Facebook, and just pull down those surveys. And you can go and take the past ones, even though they come out weekly, they're still available to you. So I've been trying to complete them as they come out. They're very good. They're very thoughtful and ask for a lot of input from us with demographics attached so that they know like who's responding to what. I've been impressed with the questions that they're asking. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, you should hop on and do that as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
I don't have too much. Council has not been meeting much this summer, which has been nice. But staff still seems to be getting a lot done, probably more done without us meeting. So that's a very good thing. First up, earlier this month, we heard about the Hiawatha Gardens, the floodplain issues, and Anne is incredibly familiar with this. So we were given the option of looking at a couple of other options. One was reducing the Hiawatha Gardens significantly, the concept significantly. And one was to do a lot of work on the creek in that location. So they're supposed to be coming back to council. Well, they'll be coming back, I think, next Tuesday or the 16th probably, to get approval to flesh out further a couple of these concepts in terms of kind of has me worried. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We had the Visit Manitou Springs, the previously known as the Chamber of Commerce, come and brief us on their plan, which was, I thought, very, very well done and helpful. We approved a significant loan for water improvements, water tank, water systems, water treatment plant, and so on, like a $4 million loan, which will get $1 million forgiveness on. So very, very nice deal for Manitou. We approved a franchise agreement with CSU, which is very exciting. It's a 25-year agreement. And one of the main things in there in that 25 years, we have to have everything undergrounded. That's or plan for and accomplish in 25 years, get all the overhead undergrounded, which is huge. We approved the Creek Walk Phase 4 design, which is from the chamber to the Chase Bank. And it'll primarily just run right along the sidewalk there. And that was very controversial, but it got approved. So that's good. Probably the biggest thing that we're facing is, I'm sure you're all aware of the survey that went out, which has been incredibly controversial. And sadly, I think unnecessarily so, because I'm not aware that council was at all interested in doing anything with this. So it kind of got, for various and sundry unfortunate reasons, it blew way out of proportion. But anyway, Chris Jenkins is apparently going to come to council on the 16th and present his proposal to council. And then the community will have an opportunity to weigh in. And they've been weighing in for weeks now. So anyway, and the proposal is for road, or my understanding is for road in exchange for donation of some property. Anyway, we'll see how that all pans out, but that'll be on the 16th, so can't wait. And unless anyone has any questions, that's all I have.
Nancy, what's that did you speak to the progress on the Dillon property?
Well, it's the demolition is well underway. It's pretty much down. They're trying to preserve the trees, and other than that, we did vote to maintain 2 of the buildings for alternative purposes. We did request that there be some community engagement ultimately on what the plans ultimately look like, but it does appear that everything is going forward with it to be a parking lot. So I don't know if that's helpful, Barb, or not, but we've not had any things on
What
it.
kind of a timeline are they on, Nancy, or are you on to?
I'm sorry, I don't, I mean, it's supposed to be open by next year.
Okay.
So, oh, and the other thing I did forget, if anyone went on the tour of the library last week, Anne went on it. It's very exciting to see the progress of what's happening with the library. So I don't know if I answered your question, Barb, but that's about all I know. It's just coming down, which is progress. So thanks.
Yes, Farley.
I did have one quick question, and it's not on topic necessarily or URA, but the section, is the section that's not undergrounded between the pool and, I don't know, I guess down almost to Chase Bank, is that on the PPRTA list as a project? Has that ever been identified as a project to get that undergrounded? It's not, what's the one where Manitou adds projects that they want done on a list? Is that RTA, PPRTA? Which one am I thinking?
Well, PPRTA, we do have a laundry list of things on PPRTA, and it's become much more generic than it used to be. But I do know that phase 4 that I just talked about of Creek Walk, which is mainly along the sidewalk, will entail taking those all out and widening it'll be at least 10-foot wide, so that'll be a bike path as well as a walking path, not just a 3-foot wide crumbly sidewalk. And all the poles along there will go away.
So that would be from like the west side of the chamber to
Chase Bank.
to Chase Bank.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay,
And that's due to be completed or to start this fall.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
That's aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for Nancy? Any other business? All right, motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
We have a motion from Farley and I see Barb with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Happy 4th, everybody. We'll see you next month.